Today I'm going to show you how to do the sewn tubular bind off. This is usually done on like a hem or armholes or necklines, and it makes a really clean bind off edge. I use this on my Agnes sweater vest pattern, and you can find the pattern on my website or Ravelry or Etsy. I use this method all the time for binding off ribbing, and I just really love the clean look that it gives, and it gives a nice stretch as well. So let's get started. I've just finished the ribbing on the second armhole, and I'm ready to bind off. There are two setup rounds for the tubular bind off, and you can do it without doing those setup rows, but I found that doing these two setup rounds just give a lot of stability to the edge of the ribbing, so I always do them, and it's really simple. And when you're doing them in the round, it's a little bit different than when you're working flat. And I'll just show you how it goes. So for the first round, you will be knitting the knit stitches and slipping the purl stitches the whole way around. So knit and bring the yarn in front and slip as if to purl and slip the stitch off the needle. Knit the next stitch, bring yarn in front, and slip the purl stitch, and bring the yarn to the back. Knit the knit stitch, yarn in front. Oops, I almost purled. Slip, bring the yarn to back, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit. Slip, knit, slip, knit, and you just do that all the way around until you reach the beginning of your round. Okay, so I've almost reached the beginning of the round, slipping all the purl stitches and knitting all the knit stitches. And for the second setup round, you will do the reverse. If you were knitting flat, you would just repeat that. You would repeat the first round. But when you're knitting in the round, you will do the reverse. So you will slip all of the knit stitches with the yarn in back and purl all of the purl stitches. So I'm going to slip, the yarn is in back, slip purlwise, and then purl the next stitch. Bring yarn to the back and slip, purl, bring yarn to the back and slip, purl, slip, purl, slip, purl, slip, purl, slip. And you can kind of start to see it's just making like a sturdier, more structured edge. That's purl, slip, purl, slip. Continue that all the way around to the beginning of the round, and then it'll be time for the bind off. Okay, so I finished the two setup rounds for the tubular bind off, And I've just pulled this cable, oops, to kind of get these stitches all closer together. And for the sewn tubular bind off, you'll need a tapestry needle, or sometimes called a yarn needle, and you will be cutting the thread before you start. So I'm just measuring. I usually do 3 times the width of what I'm working on, or the circumference of what I'm working on. And that usually gives me plenty. So there's 1, 2, 3. And this actually might be a little too much, but it's happened before where I haven't had enough and I had to join yarn and start over and all of that. So that's not fun. So the tubular bind off does take some practice, and it can be kind of confusing at first, but once you get it, then it's just a really great clean bind off method. And I always have it written down on a card like this, so that, and I just keep that in my knitting bag at all times. So you will do 2 like setup stitches to start off with. And then after that, it's 4 steps that are repeated the whole way around. It's all sort of based around if you're putting your needle in knitwise or purlwise. So I will just show you how I do it and how I remember it as I'm going along. So the first 2 stitches, you will be keeping them on the needle, or the first 2, like the setup stitches. You'll put your needle into the first stitch purlwise, and you'll have kind of a long tail at first, and I might have a little bit too long. And then you'll put your needle into the second stitch knitwise, but you're going to go from the back like this. I'm putting my needle in between these 2 stitches, and I'm going to be wrapping it around this purl stitch. And it kind of makes sense because the purl stitches already have sort of the yarn wrapped in front of them like that. So that's kind of how I remember it, is that you're never going to be wrapping around a knit stitch. You're only going to be doing it around the purl stitches. So you'll go from the back, put your needle, you're kind of wrapping it around that purl stitch, and then going out the back like that. And then you'll keep those on the needle. Okay, so to do the neck stitches, like I mentioned before, it's like a repeat of 4 different steps, but I like to combine like the first 2 steps and then the last 2 steps sort of in one, so that it's easier for me to not lose my place. And you'll kind of see what I mean as we get going. So the first stitch, you will be slipping off the needle knitwise. So slip like that, and then bring your needle around to put it into the second stitch purlwise like this, and leave it on the needle because you kind of can't slip it off anyway. And so that is the first 2 steps. That's the first 2 steps, the first 2 stitches. the next step is you will put your needle in purlwise and slip it off, and then put your needle in between these two stitches and wrap it around this purl stitch like we did at the beginning. Oops. And bring it to the back like that. And your yarn will be at the back. And that's how I know I've ended the repeat of 4 stitches, if my yarn is at the back. And then I'm set up to repeat it again. So let me do that again. First stitch, knitwise, slip, put it into the second stitch, purlwise, first stitch, purlwise, slip, come in from the back and wrap it around that knit stitch or that purl stitch, and it's to the back. And you know you're doing it right when you can see that your knit stitches just sort of fall off the edge like that, and it looks like it's, you know, the pattern just continues off the edge. Let's do that again slowly. First stitch, knitwise, slip it off. Second stitch, purlwise, leave it on the needle. First stitch, purlwise, slip, and bring your needle to the second stitch in between, and then wrap it around. That. Okay, one more time slowly, and then I'll show you, you know, what it looks like when you get used to it and you can pick up speed a little bit. So first stitch, knitwise, slip, second stitch, purlwise, first stitch, you're gonna slip purlwise, bring your needle in between these 2 stitches and wrap it around. Okay, like that. And the way that I'll kind of say the pattern to myself as I'm doing it. And there's, I've heard other people say different things, but the way that I remember it is I say knit, slip, purl, oops, and then purl, slip, knit. Knit, slip, purl, purl, slip, knit, knit, slip, purl, purl, slip, knit. Knit, slip, purl, purl, slip, knit. You can see that it's making such a nice clean edge. And like I said at the beginning, it helps to write the steps down and just have them next to you so that if you do get confused, you can refer to it. Like I said at the beginning, if your yarn is in the back, that means you've done the pattern and you're ready to start up at the, you're ready to start at the beginning again. And when I do the first two steps together like this, I know that when the yarn is in the front, then I'm on the third and fourth steps, which is purl, slip, and knit that around. Do the wrapping thing. And that's it. And then you would just do that all the way around your work. And it does take, it takes a little bit longer than like a different type of cast off, but, or a bind off. But I always think it's worth it for the finished results. And I'll come back when I finished and just show you how I finish it at the beginning or at the end of the round. Okay, coming up to the end of my round. And you just keep going until you get to the end, until you can no longer repeat the pattern. So here's my last 4 stitches. I slip, go into the second stitch, slip to purl, oops, slip, wrap it around the second stitch, and then I simply just slip as if to knit, and then put my stitch into the second needle as if to purl, or second stitch as if to purl, and that's the end. And then I will usually just bring the yarn over to here, and then I can weave it into the back. What I like to do to weave it in is sort of wrap it around the ribbing in the back. And then I may even go this way and then come back up. So it's like I'm whipping the needle around like this. And then I'll cut the yarn. And that's how you do the sewn tubular bind off, and it just creates such a nice finish. Thanks for watching.